Please turn to page 195 for informative explanatory writing at stage 11, focusing on cause and effect. On page 195 are stems to form questions for the three different types of thinking at this stage 11 level, and that is for analysis thinking, where you will either compare, contrast, or use cause and effect. That's your task in thinking for a purpose. In this video, we'll focus on cause and effect. And notice that I have two question stems for you to use in order to form those questions that will lead your students to think at this high level using the cause and effect structure. The first question stem is, why did blank change? And the second one is, why did blank happen? Notice change and happen. That is very key, because that's going to clue you in on two things. One, it's going to tell you the task. Whenever you hear, why did something change or why did something happen, then you know your task is cause and effect. Also in that question, you're going to find the purpose. Then the purpose is that this event happened or something changed, so I need to explain to you why. For example, maybe I'm reading Island of the Blue Dolphins, and at the end of the story, my question could be, in the story, Island of the Blue Dolphins, explain why Karana changed at the end of the story, why she developed new character traits by the end of the story. That could be an example of a change question. Or maybe you could ask, why did the banana change from being fresh to becoming rotten? What caused that change? And then also you could use the why did something happen? Why did the mixture explode? Why did the mine explode? Why did the Revolutionary War happen? These are your question stems that you can begin to form a question so that you can have that high level of cause and effect thinking. They know information, and now they're ready to take information they know and analyze it. And these are some guiding questions that will help them get there. Specifically today, we're focusing on cause and effect. That's a quick overview of how to form questions for cause and effect. Let's go to the cause and effect pages in this chapter. We begin on page 204. I have displayed a checklist so that when your students finish writing their cause and effect paragraphs or essays, you can use this checklist to analyze their work for their content and organization, their sentences, and mechanics. Below, you will see our cause and effect organizer and hand signs. Again, just like all the other organizers, they are set up with introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Our introduction has our SS light bulb secret formula. Our body is what's different. This is what we are going to have, these three boxes that say before, cause, after, in order to walk students through the steps to analyze the information for cause and effect. The hand signals are going to show them how to use this organizer in the body so they can analyze the information. Let's learn the hand signal. Our hand signal starts with this: before, after, what caused the change? So notice, I just said before and my hand was fine. Then I went to after and I was shaking my hand like I was in pain. Ow! Then I went to the middle and said, what caused the change? So that's telling me that's how I analyze the information. I'm going to tell you what was happening before the change. Then I'm going to jump to the after box and tell you the change. Once I have the before and after, then it's much easier to identify the causes for the change. The causes could be reasons, events, issues, or factors that cause that change. You have your beginning, where you have something one way, and then it's changed. So you're looking at the change and seeing, oh, here's how it's different. Now in the middle, what caused it to be different? That's what you're doing in cause and effect. You're identifying the reasons, the events, the issues, the factors in order to show why there was change. There's your checklist, there's your organizer. Let's go to the next page. On this page, we have our question. The students had been studying about the colonists in social studies, specifically about Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion. And after they've learned all this information, so they have had maybe lecture notes, or maybe they've been reading from the textbooks, maybe they went online and got more information about Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion. They know the information really well, so what are we ready to do? We're ready to kick it up a notch and analyze that information. We want to show change. And in this case, why an event happened. So our question is, why did Bacon's rebellion happen? So right away, students will know I'm explaining why an event happened. That's cause and effect. We have our sample organizer completed here. Notice we have keyword, a few icons. So this particular student is more of a keyword student. Some of my organizers have more icons, some have more keywords or phrases, whatever works best for the student. But we have our 2 lines so that we have our introduction, we have our body, and our conclusion. We're going to walk through the steps to fill in this organizer, and down below we have a piece of writing. Now in the previous 2 videos for compare and contrast, the finished piece of writing happened to be more of a short essay where it had an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, and they were in paragraph forms. This organizer can be an essay or it could be a paragraph, and in this case, it ended up being a paragraph. Please note that your students don't always have to write essays. Regardless of how old you are, it's what is the information, how much is there, do I need to paragraph it so it's more in that essay format, or do I just need to put it in one paragraph, that short answer? You want them to have many opportunities to go from essays to just a paragraph so that they realize that it's all about the answer to the question. It's all about what they need in the writing is going to determine how much they need to write and what format they need. So we have our sample organizer and our sample piece of writing here. On page 206 and 207 are the charts that you're using during the lesson. On page 206, this is what you would display for the students to introduce cause and effect. And on page 207, these are your at-a-glance steps that you would follow while teaching the lesson. This can also be duplicated and given to students because they are more developed writers, and when they are able to independently write cause and effect papers on their own, then you can give them these steps as a reminder of how to fill in their organizer. On page 206, when you display the chart for the students to introduce cause and effect, you're going to say to them, boys and girls, today we will write a cause and effect paper using our cause and effect organizer. And at that point, I always have the kids say, who cares? Why do we need to learn cause and effect? Excellent question. We need to explain the reasons for and the results of a change or an event. So why do we use cause and effect? To explain why an event happened or something changed. So that's why we're using this organizer, because in life, many things change and there's reasons why. Or in life, many events happen and there's reasons why. Cause and effect is teaching us to identify the reasons why there was change. So this is taking us from just information to analyzing information, and the purpose is to identify why something changed or why an event happened. Below you're going to see, here's our organizer, same format, introduction, body, conclusion. We have our hook and big idea in our introduction. The body is what we are going to learn, and I have a hand signal so you can learn how to fill in the body so you can follow your hand signal to remember how to think using cause and effect. And our bottom is our conclusion and snappy ending. Our hand sign is going to teach us the new learning. What are we doing in order to make our organizer into a cause and effect organizer? And our hand sign is this: before, after, what caused the change. So you're teaching them that hand sign, you're explaining to them why we're doing this. And next we'll go to page 207, and you will keep this sheet in front of you, and we'll walk through the steps for a cause and effect organizer. On this page, what you'll see is step 1 is the introduction. That's our SS light bulb. Our subject, who or what are we talking about when it comes to the change? And what's the big idea? What changed? What happened? What condition changed? Or what event happened? Once we identify that for our big idea, we're going to go to the body. We're going to draw 2 lines because there's always 3 boxes for cause and effect. We're going to have the first box, which is the before box, where we're going to describe or explain what was everything like before the change. Then we're going to go to the after box, and we're going to describe the change and explain the effects of that change. And finally, we'll go to the middle so that we can identify what issues, events, reasons, factors that cause the change, and we will list those out. Once we have that in our body, then we will go to our conclusion to repeat the big idea, and then we can plan our hook and our snappy ending. Grab a blank piece of paper so we can walk through the steps to answer the question, why did Bacon's rebellion happen? On your blank sheet of paper, we know we need to make our organizer with an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So what do we have? 2 lines drawn on our organizer. Now that we have our 2 lines, let's go to that first part, the introduction, the big idea, the thesis statement. We have our SS light bulb recorded so that we can begin our thesis statement. Who or what are we talking about when it comes to the rebellion? We are talking about colonists. So the colonists that were there. What's the big idea about? It's about the rebellion. What are we trying to analyze? Why Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion occurred. Because these colonists were willing to fight for their freedom and less government. And that's the effect, the rebellion, Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion. And then also we go to our setting. When did this occur? Around 1675 in the Virginia colony of Jamestown. Here's our SS light bulb with our key information on our organizer. You had seen how I quickly put the information on the organizer. I want to show you also a sample of what a student had done. The student wrote 1675, the Virginia colony of Jamestown. And the student started off with the colonists here, wrote Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion, and also about the fact that the colonists were demanding and fighting for their freedom and less government, which is their big idea. And they combined all that information together. The reason why I'm showing you the 2 different ways of how the SS light bulb was filled in is because, again, whatever works best for the students, it's very important that we have students record their ideas down. They're not writing down sentences, they're recording ideas. Then from here, they'll orally rehearse this and it'll become sentences. But how they record their ideas, simple drawings, icons, phrases, that's really what works best for them. So we have a sample of a student here who has in 1765 in the Virginia colony of Jamestown, the colonists fought for their freedom and less government in Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion. This student has all the information on their organizer recorded. They would go through, they would orally rehearse it until they found that thesis statement that sounded the best, and then they would write it down. But the ideas are there, everything that student needs to write that information down. Once we have that introduction with the big idea, where are we heading? The body. And we know that the body is going to have 3 boxes. It's going to have a before box, an after box, then the change box. And we're going to fill it in that way. Why? Because our memory device, our hand signal, will remind us to do that, where we have our before, after, what caused the change. So on this page, we have our before, what happened, we have our after. First thing we do is we fill in the before. So we're going to describe and we're going to tell about the colonists before there was ever any change. First of all, we need to tell about how they were free men. In the colonies, we are talking about the free men, not slaves. We're not talking about women. We were talking about free men. Then what we want to say is how they experienced. So what did these free men experience? They experienced something that was very different than when they had lived in England. And that is that they could vote, they could own their own land, that they had religious freedom, and they had the ability to make more money. So all these things were happening to these free men. So that's the before situation. Where are we going to go next? After. That's right. So we're going to jump to the after. We're going to see how things changed. So they're living in the colonies. They're experiencing all this freedom. Then over here is the change. We have the rebellion. We have that These free men were willing to fight, risk their lives in order to keep these freedoms and to have less government control. So here's what their lives were like before. Now, what event happened after, in which they were willing to fight, risk their lives so they could keep their freedom and have less government control. So our before was telling about their lives, and then the after is saying how things changed, and that's why this rebellion occurred. Before any changes occurred, what was their life like? And then that led to a rebellion. So now we're going to go to the middle and say, well, what happened? What caused them to change? To go from this life of where they could vote, they could own land, they had religious freedom, they were making lots of money, and then suddenly they had a rebellion against their mother country. Why? What caused that change? And that's where we're going to go in the middle. What caused the change? What happened? And we're going to look at what key events, what reasons, issues, or factors caused that change. We looked at our information and we discussed key events that caused the change. How Governor Berkeley was appointed by the king. And over 16 years, he started to, so this was a slow change. He raised taxes, he stopped voting, limited land ownership. When people tried to go into the frontier, he didn't protect them, and he gave special privileges only to some, when all of these free people here were given all types of privileges. Now only some were favored and were given privileges and others were not. So these were the reasons why those free men were willing to fight and risk their lives so that they could gain back these freedoms and have less government control. We identified those reasons, we discussed them, talked about them, and put them on our paper. I want to show you one other thing. You see the letters T and you see light bulbs. You can put them here too if you would like. You don't need to do this. This is just a way for you to help kids. The light bulb is that idea. And what's that idea? I'm going to describe, tell about, or explain this information, what it was like before the change. The after, here's the light bulb. What are you doing? I'm describing, telling about, or explaining what was happening after the change. And then in the middle, I'm describing, telling about, explaining what events, what issues, factors, what caused the change. I can record transition words or phrases also. So as I'm orally rehearsing this information, I could go back and add transitions. We have our thesis statement. We have all the information in the body that's analyzing why Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion occurred, why an event happened, using the cause and effect thinking structure. At this point, we will head to our conclusion so that we can repeat this big idea. In our conclusion, we have our S, light bulb, who or what are we talking about? And we have NB here, Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion. Nathaniel Bacon was key to leading these frontiersmen in this rebellion. We also have our snappy ending here. What was the importance of this information? After an analysis of why this event happened, let's take this and give it a snappy ending and tell about what's the importance of this information. Can I tell you why it's important, and in this case, historically important? Can I give you a new point of view? Can I give you an emotional feeling in my snappy ending? We're going to show the importance historically, why this information was important, and that it was because it was the first of many times that people, these colonists, risked their life in order to keep the new freedoms that they had gained by coming to the colonies. Students have all the information on their organizer. They're ready to orally rehearse it, and they're going to practice saying all this information over and over again. Once it sounds pretty good, then they're going to be able to write it out. On page 205, you have your sample organizer, and you have a finished piece of writing. This was a paragraph called Bacon's Rebellion, in which the student explained why this event happened. Why did the rebellion happen? And we have our stick man, we have our introduction, our big idea, we have our body, the cause and effect analysis in order to answer that big idea, and then we have our conclusion and why this information is so important. So from our organizer, we wrote out this paragraph answering the question. You can circle the parts, identify your SS light bulb, the different details, your conclusion, in order to make sure you have all the information there. So I go back up to my introduction. I have my setting back in 1675, Virginia settlement of Jamestown. There's my setting. The frontier settlers. So now I have my subject. What am I talking about? And then the big idea. They were willing to fight for freedom and less government control due to the rebellion led by Nathaniel Bacon, a wealthy plantation owner. So we had our introduction, and we created just a big idea statement here for our introduction. Go through, and we have in the body all the details showing what was the life like before, showing what caused the change, and what life was like after in the details of our paragraph. And finally, at the bottom, we have our conclusion where we're repeating the big idea and why the snappy ending, why it's so important. These are the steps for our cause and effect organizer. If students were writing this into an essay format, then they could have started off with a hook in order to expand that introductory paragraph. They could have expanded on the information in the body to make each one of these boxes a paragraph, and they could have expanded and added more to that conclusion. Otherwise, the information at this point was perfect for a paragraph. And again, regardless of what grade you are in, the amount of writing is always going to depend on how much information you have on the organizer, on the question, and how much information is there to take to writing. We have had 3 videos in which we walk through the steps for comparing, contrasting, and cause and effect. The next video is tools for informative explanatory writing. In that video, I will have detailed information on how to organize, all the different tools I use for this type of writing, as well as a detailed explanation of each tool.